kwxsoc.
Okay everybody, today we're going to be looking at this video called Easy Home Hair Transplant. Now, I saw this video on some hair loss forums. Anyway, let's get into it. But yeah, the title is pretty much suggesting this is going to be a do-it-yourself hair transplant video. So let's actually see what's going on here. And by the way, this is fair use, so let's go.
Losing your hair is a very frustrating thing. Sure, there's some guys and gals that can pull off the shaved head look, but what about the rest of us? Well, for the rest of us, we just gotta deal with people talking behind our backs about how bad we look without any hair. Or if they tell us something in front of our face, they say how much better we used to look with hair. And if you're a vain guy like me, well, you lose a little bit of self-confidence every time that happens. Though with today's technology, you can get your natural hair back in a matter of 6 months to a year. That is, of course, if you have the money to do all that.
Definitely, I would agree with what he said in the beginning. Yeah, like, losing your hair, whether you're a guy, especially as a girl, if you check out the female hair loss subreddit, it's pretty brutal. Although they tend to be tame, like I don't see female hair loss subreddit always complaining about side effects, like Tressless, the more male-dominated hair loss subreddit. I don't see them always complaining about like side effects, but I do see them, the female hair loss subreddit, being a bit more, I don't know, it's like hopeless and sad. Because it's expected that, you know, it's expected and acceptable, although not preferred, that a man can lose his hair, right? But when it comes to women, women aren't known for being bald or for having like hair issues, at least from what we see in the media. But just in general, like your day-to-day, how many women do you actually see who are like balding compared to men who are balding, right? It's just not a typical thing to see in women, although it does happen. And a lot of women, you know, go through great lengths to mask their thinning areas and balding areas, whether they're doing, you know, like wearing weaves or wigs, or even in some cases now getting hair transplants. But in general, your self-image, what you perceive of yourself, definitely takes a hit. Your confidence takes a hit. Because remember, when you had hair, when things were going right in the hair department, you may have had other insecurities, right? But that sort of familiarity that you had and that look that you had with your hair, as that changes, whether you have current insecurities, that just gets even worse. But your self-image is also impacted. Like, hair is what makes many people an individual. It's how people like to express themselves. And if you're losing that way of expressing yourself that's innate to your body, then it's definitely gonna take some hit to your confidence, your self-confidence. So yeah, and also when it comes to dating and such, definitely hair plays a big role in dating and mate selection, especially with men, right? I say especially, but at least when we're looking at how women select men, a lot of women prefer men to have their hair. Like if you have one guy, right, let's say he's equal in attractiveness while he has hair. Let's say you have two twins, right? They're both the same, they look the same, they have the same level of attractiveness. If one loses their hair and the other one keeps their hair, if there's a woman that's attracted to their baseline looks, they're not going to prefer the one that is losing their hair. But who knows, right? There's tastes and things can deviate from the norm. But yeah, this guy is definitely correct.
Though with today's technology, you can get your natural hair back in a matter of 6 months to a year. That is, of course, if you have the money to do all that. But what if you don't have $10,000 to $60,000 to do all that? Well, you're either left with wearing a wig, toupee, or like you see now, a hat. That is until now. In this video, I'll show you a non-surgical, economic way how you can get your natural hair back simply by using the tools and supplies you would normally have around the house. Though I'm not going to lie to you, I'm not a doctor, and the only way that this process works is if you have the time and dedication to do it properly. But if you have those two things, you will be very happy with the results you can get using this program. So if you think you have those two things and you're interested, well, let's get started.
Okay, so he does mention how hair transplants are very costly. But also, I'm kind of curious, like, doing this, I think he said in the beginning, a non-surgical procedure or something like that. How is he going to go about getting these everyday household objects or items to transplant his hairs? This is just kind of odd to me. But I guess I'll let the bro cook for now.
Hold up. Let him cook.
But yeah, like, this is definitely, I think we're in for a little treat in how he's going to show this sort of procedure. At least, how he's presenting it is as if it's some sort of feasible solution to do your own hair transplant. So maybe this is some sort of proof of concept type of video or some sort of demo. You know, this definitely seems like he's the type to sell some sort of protocol of some sort. Not to say that that's bad. If you have a protocol, if you have a guide that works and you can prove it, or if you have studies backing it up, then by all means, go make your money. But you're presenting this method as if it's feasible and if it's going to be like a reasonable aesthetic solution for many people dealing with androgenetic alopecia and other hair loss conditions. But yeah, without getting too much into it, let's let the guy say what he has to say.
Let's get started. Believe me, I know the information I'm about to tell you and show you may come off as offbeat, but if you give it a shot, it works. By the end of this video, I'm confident you'll see this option as a cost-effective method to get your hair back if you don't have the money to do it with more conventional methods. You're only going to need 6 tools to do this process, but it is very important that you keep your tools and workstation as clean as possible at all times. You're going to need a clean paper towel, not a semi-clean paper towel you just clean the floor with or wash your hands with, but a clean paper towel. With this paper towel, you will split it in two and use one side to immerse it in rubbing alcohol, while the other side will be used to clean your scalp during the time you work on your hairline. You will need a lot of alcohol when doing this process to clean your tools like your needle on the string and your tweezers, but also your workstation. It doesn't matter what percent of volume it is of alcohol as long as it is rubbing alcohol. The key thing to remember though is to use it to constantly clean your tools and workstation before, during, and after each time you work on your hairline.
Yeah, that is definitely true. Having a sterile environment, you know, proper sanitation is definitely needed, especially when you're going to do some sort of, you know, invasive process. Like if you're poking holes into your scalp and then you're going to be introducing these foreign objects into contact with this open tissue, this open wound that you're essentially creating, that could definitely be a source of, you know, a site of infection. So it's wise to try to limit that. But also, it's probably wiser not to do your own hair transplant, right? Better to get an expert that can do that for you. So there's that.
You will need a simple pair of tweezers to do this process, preferably ones that don't taper out in the nose, or fishbone tweezers as they're called. You don't want to use those types. Basically tweezers that allow you to use them with ease and give you great mobility to your wrist when using them over your head.
Okay, so the tweezers, I'm assuming these tweezers are going to be used to try to implant the hair follicle into the graft wound that you're going to be making, the hole that you're going to be making. There's probably, I mean, he did mention you have, like, having these kinds of tweezers would be useful when you're going to put this over your head and try to maneuver it inside of the graft wound. But again, I just don't know if this is even feasible to be conducting such an operation. It looks very shady to me. But let's see what else he has in terms of the tools.
The first question you will probably ask yourself is, what is the correct size sewing needle I need to start doing this process? And, well, simply one that has a diameter about the same size as your hair follicles, or a little bit smaller than that. Later on, we'll talk about the subject of when to change your needle after you've worked with it for a while. You might also wonder what is the purpose of threading the needle with the string, and that is to help you have better control of the needle and keep it from falling on the floor or other surfaces or it's sure to pick up bad bacteria you don't want to introduce onto your scalp or under the tissue underneath your scalp.
So he's going to be using some sort of a pin that has a similar diameter size to a hair follicle in order to essentially make that graft hole, that graft wound, so he can plant those hair follicles inside of those holes or wounds. This is a kind of, again, it is kind of weird that he's doing this. I'm not entirely sure if those were hair follicles. It could have just been the hair with the bulb, the little like white part stripped off of it. I'm not sure if that's the actual hair follicle that he showed. But we'll see. We'll see how he extracts the hair follicle from presumably the DHT safe zones in his scalp. So this is looking to be a pretty interesting video.
You will use iodine for various purposes in this process to increase your hairline. First, to clean the scalp and keep bad bacteria from forming and growing on it. Second, using iodine regularly keeps your scalp from becoming too flaky in the areas you've been working on. And third, iodine assists the scalp to heal from the punctures you've made.
Yeah, definitely. Iodine, another good sort of antiseptic to have to prevent harmful bacteria and microbes from entering your scalp. So yeah, that's a good way to just clean your scalp too.
Said before, this process takes time and dedication because essentially what you will be doing is transplanting hairs from one part of your body onto the scalp. So due to the shock of being extracted from their area of origin, some hairs will die off before being accustomed to the scalp and promoting new hair growth. The other hairs that manage to stay on your scalp for a prolonged period of time will stimulate new hair growth, but like all hairs, they too will fall off once they reach the end of their life cycle. So don't become stressed when that happens. This process works, but it takes time and dedication.
Yeah, we know this to be true. When you're doing a hair transplant, the areas in which you're taking the hairs out of, the donor region, it also will take time for that particular region to heal from essentially the wounds that you created from extracting the hair follicles. But also the newly transplanted regions, if there's any native hair surrounding those regions, they do have the potential to fall out. And also the hair follicle that you've transplanted into those, the balding areas, the recipient areas, maybe the hair follicle grows some hair for a bit, maybe a month, or who knows how long. It's typically short term, but eventually those hairs fall out. It's not that the hair follicle falls out, as long as you don't rub against it or do something, wacky, but the hair from that hair follicle will fall out because, there's this thing called shock loss, right? The general shock of moving the hair follicle into a different area, this entire procedure, it's going to take time for the blood vessels to connect to that hair follicle, to give it new nutrients, to allow it to grow. And in that process, it has to let go of that hair that it's producing. The hair follicle has to let go of that hair that it's producing and essentially has to reset before it can grow hair again. So definitely what he's saying is true. Hair transplant takes time. Some people don't see results until like 6 months after the procedure, and they don't get their full results until like a year to a year and a half. Some people even 2 years. But it tends to be a year to a year and a half. That's when you get your maximum results. So yeah, I would totally agree with him. It takes time to actually show that it works.
So here I am after 3 months of doing this process, and you will see I still have almost no progress to speak of. I have almost no hairs on the front part of my scalp, and what does appear to be hair is actually big dry scalp flakes. The reason this is the case is because I was using the wrong tools and technique when working on my hairline, like using a very thick diameter needle and inserting the hairs the wrong way.
So yeah, like I mentioned at the beginning, there is no real way when you're doing this sort of do-it-yourself hair transplant to ensure that you're going to get the right angle of the hair follicle, right? It's a really, I guess for the sake of research and science, right, this is, interesting, but in terms of it being presentable and aesthetically appealing, probably, it's not the best choice, right, to be doing this kind of procedure on yourself. Now, he mentioned that he used the wrong needle diameter. Okay, that, maybe that's a point to be considered. But I have to, assess how is he splitting the hair grafts, right? Sometimes a single hair follicle, you can get about 3 hairs coming out of it, right? So you have a hair follicle that could be labeled as, 3 graft, 2 graft, essentially 2 hairs per graft, 3 hairs per graft. Like, you have these sort of hair follicles that can produce different amounts of hair, right? Some people even get a single hair follicle producing 4 hairs, which is pretty crazy, and that's typically used for density. The single hair grafts, that's used in the hairline so it can look a bit more natural. So I don't know what he's saying, if what he's saying is true, that, you know, he messed up by using the wrong needle diameter or whatever. But at least from the looks of it, you know, maybe I'll let the video run, but from the looks of it, it looks like he just fucked up his scalp. It looked like he just injured his scalp, right? After 3 months, this shouldn't, your scalp shouldn't look like this. It shouldn't look flaky. It shouldn't still have holes inside of it. Now, I get the healing process is different for other people, for many people, right? But, like, this is a bit excessive. This is 3 months after he did his procedure, his first do-it-yourself hairline transplant or hair transplant procedure. So that detail seems kind of weird. And if you still have like this redness and flaking in that same area after 3 months, you probably you know, fucked up and infected your scalp, or just some other bullshit is happening. But this kind of makes me question his credibility. It seems kind of like a weird, like a narrative that he just strung together, because after 3 months, this shouldn't be the case, is what I'm trying to say.
Once you're 3 months into doing this process, you will probably be further ahead in progress than what you see in this picture compared to me. 3/22/2011. Here you see a clean scalp with a buzz cut, but no real progress to speak of, only stubs of hair, and that brings me to an important piece of information. When you insert your hairs into your scalp, do not immediately cut off the top ends of those hairs to make them look uniform with the rest of your scalp hairs. You see, the donor hairs you just extracted are already in a state of shock from that process, so to snip off the top end causes it further injury and decreases the chances it will stay a prolonged period of time on your scalp to promote new hair growth. In this process, only after those hairs have been on your scalp for a month or a little bit better, if you want it longer, then you should attempt to cut off the top ends and make them look uniform with the rest of your scalp hairs. This waiting period gives your transplanted hairs a little bit of healing period from the shock of being extracted, and better improves the chances they will stimulate new hair growth on your scalp. 4/24/2011. Here you can see progress up here. I was refining my technique and becoming faster and better at transplanting hairs. This will also happen to you. You see, at first it will be a struggle just to keep your hand steady and not become frustrated when doing this process, but with practice you'll become faster and better at transplanting your hair follicles.
Okay, so I'm not gonna lie, like, hopefully there's no Hollywood magic here, but that is pretty impressive. Like, you know, I do see the progress of it. It's in the same lighting, so I'm not gonna lie, I do see like there's some sort of growth that's happening. So yeah, it's I mean, definitely it's interesting. I'm not sure how much he transplanted. He did say it was his hairline. Maybe later on in the video we'll see. But looks like bro is backing up the words that he's saying with actual facts. So I'm not gonna lie, that's good on him. I'll give him his props there. Let's watch the video.
6/5/2011. A month later, and it looks good in terms of progress, so I took a break after this picture was taken because it was getting too hot in my part of the world, and blood, sweat, and dirt don't mix well at all with punctures to the scalp. So if it's getting too hot in your part of the world too, take a break and give your scalp time to heal and continue when the heat lets up. If you're living in the part of the world where it's always hot, then only do this process in temperature-controlled areas.
A point that I want to, you know, bring up and maybe ask to the audience, is he like doing a hair transplant every month, every other month? Like he's doing these smaller sessions here and there? It looks like that's the case. Maybe I'm not following correctly, but I think that's what he's doing, because he's mentioning how his technique is improving, and the change in, you know, it's he says this after every month essentially, right? Or every other month. So it looks as if he's doing a hair transplant every other month, which, you know, I've heard of people getting like different procedures done, like maybe especially in the same time frame, right? Maybe they have a lot of hair in the middle section of their scalp, and also near the parietal lobe, right? But they have some weak hairline. They have some weak hairline issues, and they also have some thinning at their crown, right? So I've heard people within like 4 months of each procedure having a hair transplant. So essentially 2 hair transplants in 1 year. That's probably not advisable. It's better to be, slow and methodical in terms of crafting a better head of hair, because again, with the shock loss, potential of just causing, more trauma to the scalp than what's necessary, right? Even if you just, cause trauma to one area of the scalp, who's to say that doesn't divert, the blood flow and attention in terms of healing from other regions of the scalp, right? You just don't want to do these, very, I would say, I guess, intense procedures within a short time frame. So if he's doing like a micro hair transplant every other month, again, that's not the best idea, guys. Don't do this yourself unless you're willing to, 1, fuck up your donor area, 2, possibly give yourself an infection, and maybe 3, just not do anything that's really presentable, right? You're not going to have an aesthetic kind of look with your hair if you're doing it yourself respectfully. But unless you can accept all those responsibilities and you have like some sort of high IQ, savant kind of guy, then if you can do that and it looks great, all the power to you. But I'm not going to advocate for that. Just don't be a cheap broke boy, is what I'm trying to say.
Wow. 10/9/2011. Here I was running into serious problems. You see, I was in a frantic mindset, trying to finish this process and be done with it. But as you can see here, that only made things worse, with major scabs now all over my scalp.
God damn. Oh my god. Like, okay. Over here, there's a lot of redness, a lot of, inflammation and such. But I think, maybe these are like the new hairs he put in. There's definitely a lot of scabbing. So it could have been like, a couple days after his particular procedure that he did on himself. So I think at this point it's pretty much confirmed that he's doing a hair transplant, every other month or so on himself. But yeah, I do see some hairs here. Maybe that's from the earlier procedures. I'm assuming all these like scab points, these little wounds and dot areas are like the new things that he, the new hair follicles that he, transplanted, the new grafts. But again, like he has such a good amount of hair, such a good donor region. It's kind of a shame to see that he's just fucking it up, in my opinion. But anyway, we ball anyway.
You see, I was in a frantic mindset, trying to finish this process and be done with it. But as you can see here, that only made things worse, with major scabs now all over my scalp.
Okay, yeah, so that pretty much confirms it. He's doing these hair transplants almost every other month. I don't advise that. Overall, I don't think it's a good idea to be doing a do-it-yourself hair transplant. I think most people know that this is true. But if you are going to do that, it's not a good idea to just do these periodical hair transplants, right? And like he said he rushed it, and now he has all these random scabs. I would wager, I would bet that a lot of the supposed hair follicles that he's transplanting over to these new regions, they probably died. They probably just didn't get the sufficient depth, and they didn't get the sufficient, blood supply. They probably died. I would say probably most of them. And what we see as progress is essentially his native hair that he has in this like dead zone, whatever like hair that's still active. It's just growing, and it's giving the appearance that he's, getting progress, but it's just, in reality, he's just letting his hair grow out. His existing hair grow out. But maybe I'm talking shit. Maybe I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Maybe we'll see momentarily what comes out of this wacky dude's process.
11/7/2011. Here I started using iodine more regularly, but as you notice, I look like a mess with the long hairs and the short transplanted hairs. So unless you're just patching up small bald spots, I recommend cutting your hair to a short length when doing this process, maybe to around 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch short. This also helps you easier identify spots you don't have much hair in and see what areas you can work on.
Okay, so yeah, that's also what I said before, right? Like, he, again, does have, like, he still has some small amount of hair in his midsection that existed before his hair transplant procedure. So whatever, you know, growth that he's possibly getting, you know, in terms of his progress, right? Because he shaved that particular region, his midsection, he shaved it before. Whatever growth that he looks like he's getting, it could just be from vellus hair, right? And vellus hairs are thin, wispy, small, you know, like narrow hairs that rarely have color, and they don't get to the same length as what is called a terminal hair. And terminal hair is, like, as you can see, it's like this kind of hair here. If you're looking at the screen, it's darker, longer, and thicker in its width. It's just more robust, and you can manipulate it more than a vellus hair. So if you're looking at the screen, right, let me see if I can magnify the view. But these hairs over here, these are terminal hairs, and these like small, you know, wispy, you know, hairs over here, these are vellus hairs, or peach fuzz hairs, as he said. And he did make a point about shaving your hair down to, you know, so you don't have an issue when transplanting in those particular areas. Now, for most surgeons, I would say that they can do these things called a partial shave hair transplant. And sometimes some hair transplant doctors or surgeons, they prefer to do a partial shave hair transplant because they want to see how the hair currently looks. If they're trying to say, let's say, build a new hairline, right? They want to build around the existing hairline so they get an idea of how your hair could look like when the newly transplanted hair grows out, right? So they want to get the idea of how the hair currently looks like while they're transplanting, but also it could help with not taking vital nutrients from the native terminal hairs in that particular region, so they can kind of build around it rather than destroy existing hair follicles to essentially like place ones that are, you know, not as dense. So it's a good methodology to do a partial shave hair transplant, not a full shave. But, you know, you do have surgeons that prefer full shave after they have the idea of the hairline. But again, usually it's up to the patient as well.
11/23/2011. Here are more progress and now expanding to the side areas of my scalp. Also, by now the transplanted hairs have started to stimulate new hair growth, though I will admit you can see from the redness of my scalp that I should have been giving it more time to heal and regenerate. 12/09/2011. More progress, but if you look at the top view, one would say I should have focused more on the outer edges, as they appear to hardly have any hair growth to speak of. The reason I neglected this area is because for months before this picture was taken, I was seeing growth of the vellus hairs, or so-called peach fuzz hairs in those areas, which I thought were generated by hairs I had inserted in that area. It's hard to see in this picture, but they're there. If you're wondering what vellus hairs are, well, vellus hairs are like baby hairs, except they never become full adult hairs. 1/13/2012. So here I am, and it's a new year, and I'm still keeping at it after over a year of doing this process, and still making steady progress. Though, as you can see, some spots still need work on them done. 3/1/2012. Here I took some rest and let my scalp heal, and as you can see, some hairs have fallen out from the last picture, but like I said before, that's expected. But for the most part, many hairs have stayed on the scalp and have stimulated new hair growth in areas I didn't have any hairs before when I first started doing this process. 3/29/2012. 20 plus days later, and I got into a groove and regularly worked on my scalp, and as you can see, it looks good. But I probably should have focused more on the side areas of my scalp, like I always keep saying I'm going to do, but I always neglect.
Okay, so I will admit, at least from what he's showing right now, yeah, there seems to be like a lot of progress. Like over here, like you can see the puncture sites that he made, right? These small little sites. Now that I have a good view, and it's because, you know, I kind of expanded the video view, you can actually see that he has some growth, some progress. They look like little plugs, like hair pluggy type hair transplants, but nevertheless, you know, this is pretty impressive for a do-it-yourself hair transplant. So, yeah, I'm actually more impressed now than I am like disappointed. But again, it isn't a good idea to do this yourself. I must reiterate that. But you know, he's adventurous and he is getting some results here. I'm not gonna lie, this is pretty impressive.
You wonder what is the best area you should start working on. Ideally, I would tell you where your hairline ends and just gradually go from there and move outwards to areas where you don't have any hair volume in. The benefit of doing it this way is it helps you hide any noticeable signs that you have any hairline progress, so you don't get any intrusive questions like, did you get a hair transplant?
That's a pretty good methodology that he's talking about, right? Like trying to go in this sort of step by step from the back to the front kind of process. I kind of like that. Or from I guess you can start either at your hairline or from the back, but at least the way he's going about describing it, yeah, his methodology works out too, because he's gradually building on his hair transplant. He's doing it like every other month, or every other. He's doing it every other month as it seems. So, his reasoning is, I would say, it's legit. Yeah, I would agree.
Hair transplant, though probably better when you first start out. Pick an area of the scalp you feel most comfortable and have the most control, puncturing your scalp and inserting your donor hairs, because when you first start out, you might feel your hand a little bit shaky. The next question you might ask is, how deep of a puncture should you make so you can properly insert your donor hairs? Well, everyone's scalp is not exactly the same, but as a general rule, a minimum of 3/16 to a maximum of 5/16 should you puncture the scalp. If you're going to go a quarter of an inch deep, you're probably going to get a lot of blood vessel ruptures. We'll go over how to deal with blood vessel ruptures later on in this video, though if you do get a blood rupture, the main thing to remember is to not panic, but when it does happen, what you're going to do is get the other half of your clean paper towel and stop the bleeding by applying pressure to the rupture until it stops, which is usually about 30 to 40 seconds if you apply pressure correctly and use a dry, clean paper towel. Of course, before you begin, make sure your needle is not dull, because if it is, the puncturing part of this process is going to hurt more than it needs to.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, if you've ever seen any sort of hair transplant video, you're going to get like blood that comes out, right? There's a lot of blood in the scalp. So just because you puncture the scalp and you get blood coming out of it, that's not something to really worry about. I mean, it is a point of concern if you're doing it kind of like this guy's doing it, if you're doing a do-it-yourself hair transplant. But I would say that in general, if you see your hair transplant doctor drawing blood from your scalp as he's going about making the specific puncture sites for the grafts to go inside, and he's extracting your hair follicles to put it in there, like you have to expect blood, right? That's just part of the game. That's just how it is. It's not something to be, to freak out about. Oh, I'm bleeding on my scalp. Something went wrong. No. Now, if you're doing some shit like this and you fuck up, that's on you, bro. But no. But before I start the video again, as you guys can see, like the way that these hairs are coming out, these are definitely like transplanted into this particular region. So I'm actually fairly impressed about what this guy did. Like, this is pretty cool. So I think in theory, if you are like a super hardcore nerd and you truly understand how these tools work, I could see somebody out there doing some high IQ person doing a proper do-it-yourself hair transplant. I can definitely see that. At least in the midsection and hairline area, I could definitely see someone doing that. Someone adventurous to do that. I can see that. So this is a really cool video. I'm not gonna lie. This is really cool thing that he's showing us. So props to this guy, definitely. Now I just thought of this. Why not use like clean Q-tips, right? Instead of using these sort of like I don't know, like knotted up paper towels. Just a thought, just saying something out loud.
Now that you're ready to start extracting hairs, you may be asking yourself two questions like, what areas of the body can I use hairs from, and what types of hairs can I use to do this process? And I will tell you, I've used them all, and from my experience, you can use hairs from all over your body, but remember, don't use leg hairs for any reason whatsoever. And when using facial hairs, use caution and care. Why? Well, because since you're primitively extracting donor hairs in those areas with your tweezers, sometimes the new hairs that grow in those places come out ingrown and are unable to penetrate the skin surface, which can feel painful and itchy for days, weeks, or even months. Also, use extraction in areas that are concealable, like in your pelvic area, because sometimes areas that are heavily used for extracting hairs will develop newly ingrown hairs in that spot, and while not feeling itchy or painful, may give the appearance you have unhealthy red skin blemishes in those areas, or simply put, a bad case of acne in those areas, like in this picture shown here. You may be asking yourself now, is he saying pubic hairs are also usable in this process? Yes. Try to use as many as you can to fill in your scalp, though an advanced piece of advice to you so you don't get discouraged later on is because pubic hairs are sometimes a bit more larger in diameter than normal hairs found on your scalp. They may look out of place on your scalp, but more importantly, if you use too thick of a pubic hair, it may not stay in place long enough to grab a hold of your scalp and stimulate new hair growth. So use pubic hairs a lot, but only use pubic hairs.
So
with
my
a small
man used
diameter.
all kinds of hairs across his body. So I can only imagine, hey guys, if you have a lot of pubes, a lot of chest hair, okay, the pubes thing is kind of disgusting. If you're using your crotch hair and your armpit hair, I think okay, whatever. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but it is what it is. But something like beard hair and maybe chest hair too, because some people, they have a lot of hair on their chest and shit. That could probably suffice in terms of filling out those like patchy areas on your scalp. If you've already established a good hairline and you just want, to make your crown a bit more fuller, you definitely could use some sort of body hair. I would say your beard hair is the closest in terms of consistency to your scalp hair, right? So if you want to sacrifice some beard hair, let's say you have a lot of beard hair to begin with, then maybe you can use it strategically on your scalp. And also in terms of length, like if you have the genetics for it, like a long anagen phase for your beard hair, then that's definitely beneficial, right? If you say, fuck it, I don't really care about a beard, I want a full head of hair, you probably could transplant a good deal, a sizable amount of your beard hair to your scalp. So yeah, that's true. But in terms of like the beard hair becoming ingrown, beards tend to be a bit more coarse for some people. Even people who have like 4C afro hair, their beard may be even more coarse. So if you have coarse scalp hair to begin with, your beard hair may be, a bit more coarse, or, just as coarse as your scalp hair. So there's that. But yeah, ingrown hairs, that can be a nuisance. So be careful with that, because when hair becomes ingrown, it can inflame the skin. You can get these like really weird pimples, and it can be painful too, so just be careful.
Hey, now that you know what areas of the body you can use hairs from, now let's move on to the topic of what are the best types of hairs you can use in this process. I will tell you donor hairs that are extracted with shaggy roots, like the one shown here, are ideal. When you extract the hairs with your tweezers, usually you will get these types of shaggy root hairs, though sometimes you might extract a more complete hair with white sheet on the sides and ends of the hair. Those types of hairs are fine to use as well, though a little bit harder to insert in the puncture you just made, though give it a try, and with practice you'll be able to insert those types of donor hairs as well. Okay, now you're ready to start inserting hairs. So immediately after you've made the puncture for the hair, and in less than 30 seconds after you've extracted the donor hair, insert it into the puncture. With your tweezers, grab hold of the hair you've just extracted and slowly wiggle and push it into the puncture you've made until you feel you can no longer push it in any further. Then try to straighten it up perpendicular to your scalp, and then move on to your next hair. Remember, don't spin or twirl the donor hair once you've set it in place. And remember, you might want to, but resist the urge to scratch the areas you've been inserting a few new hairs in certain areas several times because of this. So don't get discouraged. The best thing you can do is to take out those donor hairs with your tweezers and insert a new one in that puncture after you blow dried your scalp. You can also try and set it back in place, but in my experience, the first time a hair becomes dislodged, it ends up dying anyways and falls off completely in a matter. So as you see here, I start on one spot and gradually expand until I have covered all areas I've been working on and beyond. Remember, you're not going to do this when you're heading out for work, or you have an important business presentation, or you're going on a date. Do this when you're calling it a day and going to sleep. You might be wondering, is iodine really necessary? And I will tell you, yes, it is. It is an important step that you need to do in this process to keep your scalp from looking like this. It's important to be up and close to the mirror you're using so you can have the best view possible when puncturing, but if you want, use hairs from the side to fill in the top parts of your scalp. I realize that once you start to build some thickness on your scalp, it may get harder to locate the punctures you made to insert the hairs, because so many hairs are now in the way. So after you become proficient with the techniques I've shown you in this video, you can leave the needle in your scalp until you have transplanted hairs in your tweezers ready to transplant. But don't keep the needle in there for
Okay.
too long.
I'm not gonna lie, guys. I'm not gonna lie. Like, this looks pretty legit. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. This is pretty impressive. Although it's kind of like diffuse. I think if he had a second version of himself and a much more invested setup, like if he was a twin, right, and they both had the same intelligence and sort of expertise and nerdism inside of them, they could definitely pull this off. I think, like, maybe not get like something comparable to an expert, but fill up the area is what I'm trying to say. They could fill up the bald regions. So this is pretty impressive. I want to go here. This is like really impressive, at least to me. Like he really did fill this up pretty well. So I would say, like, at least from how it's being presented to me, unless there's no Hollywood magic, so to speak, this seems to be a good do-it-yourself hair transplant on the scalp. This is the first one I've ever seen, so I don't know how to properly rank it in terms of do-it-yourself hair transplants, but this is pretty impressive. I'm not gonna lie.
But I'm pretty confident with all that you've seen and learned
So
in this video,
I just looked at the end of the video. Let's see.
Get you on the road to getting your natural hair back. Though you have to remember, this is always going to be a slow and steady process. But if you put in the time and dedication to learn the process, you'll be very happy with the results you can get using this program. Also, as you can see, I still have a little bit of work to do on my front of my head, so I'm going to be doing this program alongside of you, and you can catch my updates and new tips and information on the company website listed below. Well, I think that's it for now, and thank you for watching.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Look at this. This is, although the lighting is pretty shit in the room, I can definitely see that if he added a bit more density in the hairline region and also like part of the mid scalp, and maybe through some sort of like stylistic combing, yeah, I can see that this being a pretty presentable, or at least semi-presentable thing to walk outside with. It's not bad at all, though, in terms of a do-it-yourself hair transplant, at least in my opinion. So this guy is definitely adventurous. I'm not gonna lie, this is really impressive. Let's go check out his YouTube channel, though. This is his channel. So, okay, I did look at his video here that I wanted to point out. I want to see his... Okay, let's see. So if this is his results, let's check it out real quick.
Losing your hair can wreak havoc on your self-confidence, believe me, I know. But it doesn't have to be that way. Get this video, watch it, and get on the road to getting your natural hair back and a little bit more of yourself.
Okay, so maybe that's a bit cap. Maybe he did do this. Maybe he's wearing a hair system. But I don't know. Do you guys think he actually was able to do all this sort of density himself? Because in the other video, it looked like he was slowly progressing to that point. But this looks too good to be true. This looks like a... Maybe with the lighting and maybe with some sort of hair fibers or whatever, it looks like a hair system to me. If it's not a hair system, that's super impressive. But I don't know if you can get this density through a do-it-yourself hair transplant. I'm going to say no. I don't think this is a legit thing that he's showcasing. So he says over here, fast, easy, low price hair loss concealer. So maybe he's doing this thing where it's like it's partially a self or do-it-yourself hair transplant, but also he's using enhancements and concealers. Maybe the confluence of those two things, it's supposed to be like, okay, now we have something that's presentable.
If you're still on the fence about poking holes in your scalp after watching an easy home hair transplant DVD, I have another solution for you. Lava Colonia's Instant Hair Volumizer. Want to know how it works? I'll show you.
Okay. So he is selling a product here. We have to acknowledge that this guy is selling a product from his website. Okay. I'm like wondering if this guy's hustle was to sell these like weird products in the hopes that like he'll actually have enough money to get a proper hair transplant, because he does have the donor area to possibly give him like really, really good results. So who knows what this is all about? I don't know. All right, so let's keep looking at this channel. It looks like I already watched a bit of this video because somebody sent that video to me when I sent the overall channel to my Discord server. They sent me this one to check out. But this is a much more recent video. It's from a year ago, while the video we just watched is from 5 years ago, right? And the hair loss concealer one is from 10 years ago. But we're gonna look at this video over here. Okay, so it looks like he's for some reason he's doing the process again. So maybe he just didn't do a good job the first time, and maybe the hair loss progressed. But as you saw, like in the channel overview when we scrolled through it, he mentioned that he did not use Finasteride or Propecia. So we can only imagine that his hair loss definitely progressed. But what I'm more so suspect about is, did he not transplant a significant amount of pubic hair to his scalp? And if that is the case, if that is actually the case that he did transplant that pubic hair to his scalp, how come it seemingly evaporated, right? Those pubes should be DHT resistant. Body hair is mostly DHT resistant. So it's kind of strange how the pubes that he put in his scalp, unless this area, you know, is the site of the pubes, it looks like largely they've evaporated, or maybe he shaved it down, who knows. But he's doing the process over here. I do think this is just a very impractical thing. This guy is very wacky. So wacky and innovative. I think when you put those two together, you're kind of going to get either a genius or a scam artist. And either way, they're both artists of some sort, right? But let's look at this video. So this video is called "Why Don't I Just Use Finasteride?" I mean, his hair looks like it finished its last ride with him. But yeah, let's proceed with that.
One thing that I just wanted to say is, one of the things that always pops up in the comments section is, they always say, why don't you just use Propecia? Why don't you just use Finasteride and try it out? It worked for me. And I will say I did use it. I did try it out back in 2012. I did take it for 6 months. But the thing with that, I did start to see some noticeable gains, even though despite it only being 6 months. Of course, most medical professionals recommend that you take it a year before you start seeing some noticeable, fairly noticeable gains. But I did start to see noticeable gains in those 6 months. But the big thing that deterred me from continuing the Finasteride and the side were because of the side effects, the Propecia. Actually,
now I will say, when it comes to like side effects, especially those sexual side effects, professionals say that if anyone is to get a side effect from Finasteride, it usually shows up within the first 6 months, and also with continual use, your body becomes adapted to Finasteride. There's this whole thing that it's not the lack of DHT that's causing your issues. It's the elevation in testosterone, and that testosterone, the elevated testosterone, aromatizing into estrogen, right? And when you have that excess estrogen, it can mess with things like libido, and just in general, when you're messing with the fluctuation of the hormones, you can get these sort of issues. So it's not so much as DHT is important to to be able to have that sort of libido, and but it's to say that when you're rapidly fluctuating with hormones, some people can't adapt properly. Some people are very infrequent with their regimen. Maybe they use 3 pills 1 week, 5 the next, 7 the next, 2 the next, and it's like this infrequency that's causing fluctuation in the hormonal profile rather than a consistent use. And honestly, that's why I like dutasteride, and I in my non-doctor recommendation, just my personal opinion, I would think dutastride's a bit better than finasteride in terms of side effects, and the studies seem to prove that. And the reason why I say that is dutastride, because of its long half-life and other pharmacokinetics, like specifics to dutastride, it takes dutastride longer to work than finasteride, right? So the effect on DHT is more gradual, and that is the elevation in testosterone and the possible aromatization and displacement into estrogens is also gradual as well. So it gives your body time to kind of adjust itself. But again, with continual use between finasteride and dutastride, you're going to get over those side effects if you ever have them. And to even get those side effects to begin with, it is pretty rare. A lot of people, when it comes to like sexual sides and such and libido sides, it's mostly like a psychological thing, right? There could be other stuff in your life that's actually causing you to have those particular issues. So don't nocebo affect yourself out of using these particular hair loss drugs. Just be consistent, and if you have to, you can titrate down to a 0.5 milligram finasteride every other day or every day, or you can use 1 milligram every other day. So yeah, there's that.
Finasteride, because I used the generic type, and the thing with those ones is they weren't small side effects. They weren't like dizziness or loss of appetite or upset stomach or anything like that. It was testicular pain, and it wasn't testicular pain that.
Well, damn, that's I've heard people complain about that, but it's like it is a listed side effect, but it's pretty rare. But nevertheless, not to be dismissive, that usually goes away with continual use. But that is a really rare side effect, to get the kind of like this testicular pain that this guy's talking about. So, yeah, that don't fearmonger yourself out from using finasteride or dutastride. Again, look at the studies, watch my videos, watch Hair Cafe's videos on the research. It is pretty rare. Anyway, thanks for watching this video, guys. It's been really extended. Hopefully this was like a good reaction. Hopefully you got some entertainment out of this. Maybe it's some sort of podcast now. But yeah, thanks for watching this video, and hope to see you on the next one. And if you're ever interested in getting any sort of one-on-one consultation with me, you can go to my hair consultation service in the description below and sign up. I'm on Discord. This is my Discord right over here. You can find me on Discord, and if you pay the proper amount and contact me, definitely fill out the form. I'll be able to help you as best as I can. But anyway, thanks for watching this video, guys, and I hope to see you in the next one. Peace out.